the way because I chose a path that is not really well trodden in Malaysia, but there's a lot of other people who's doing it, yeah, throughout the world. The nice thing about having technology now is the world becomes borderless. It's very easy to communicate with other people throughout the world, yeah. Now, I'm the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning. Center for Center for Engineering Education. I used to be the director, the deputy director of the Center for Teaching and Learning before that. Then, you know what, CEE has an interesting history because it seems that, well, I've been the founding director since 2011, 2010. Then we became a Center of Excellence in 2013. Then, well, I'm still here. I'm still at the CEE. Perhaps I have to change after this. Now, the CEE, when we started out as a center, it was not a center of excellence. There's a difference in a university. I don't know about UTP, but in public universities, when you say you're in a center of excellence, there's a certain meaning to it. That means a center of excellence is a center of excellence that's registered, that is accepted by the Senate, and there's certain KPIs that you have to report to, you have to be accountable for. Yeah. Now in Malaysia, we just have the instrument for the Center of Excellence for R&I, Research and Innovation, and also for services, for the consultancy part. But there's supposed to be one more, which is for teaching and learning. Yeah. The instrument has been, we have completed the instrument, but then it has not been launched yet. But when I set up the CEE, I was aiming for it to be a center under the teaching and learning category. Yeah. But when we set up, when the university asked us to set up the CEE, it was just to take care of the PhD in engineering education program. Yeah. So we were put under the School of Graduate Studies. And all we had to do was, as long as I can get students to go in, as long as I can help the students to graduate, as long as I can organize programs and the courses for the students, that's fine. But then I managed to get somebody from the Faculty of Education, Dr. Fatin, to be my deputy at that time. And both of us seems to be like hyperactive. We were doing things that were not prescribed to us. Because if you look at the natural progression of an academic, you know, there's research involved, there's publication, and for one thing, we had mentors from out of Malaysia, yeah, because this was non-existent in Malaysia. Anyway, this is where CEE is now. This is our community, the community that we have managed to develop from, I think, not bad, yeah? From 2011 and then 2013, we became a center of excellence, and we have grown quite a bit. So we have managed to develop a reputation for ourselves, and we have managed to help a lot of people learn a lot of new things. Yeah. So we're quite proud of that. Now, in terms of research, I did my master's in the US, so it was a 2-year master because I had to take courses, advanced courses, and I had to do a full research with a thesis. Now, that enabled me to basically learn everything about advanced chemical engineering. So if you ask me to teach any of the core chemical engineering courses, I can do it, even the advanced ones, because of that training. But that's why it took me 2 years to finish my master's instead of the usual 1 year. But the research was really interesting. There was no research methodology course in the US, so your supervisor will essentially guide you. But in the US, you are not only dependent on one supervisor, there's a panel. So my panel was very, very helpful. And I really enjoyed the research. They didn't tell me to publish, but then everybody was writing papers, so I started writing papers. So it was not really enforced. You have to write papers, otherwise you cannot graduate. But this is like, you know, you write papers, then you can join the community, you can go to conferences, meet other people to see what other people are doing. So it was all done in a very positive environment. I never saw research and publication as something that is full of stress and tension. Maybe that was why I'm still here. Then I did my PhD in Canada, and they have that same environment. And, we were in our office, okay, this is a conference, maybe we should go there. And our supervisor would say, okay, never mind, then I'll give you the money, you can go. So it was all like that. He was not pushing us to go and publish, go and publish, go and publish. Nothing like that ever happened. And as a result of that, I view research in a very positive light. Because it's all in the pursuit of knowledge and to expand the knowledge and to make and to help you understand more and to be part of the community to expand the knowledge. Yeah. Then come my interest in engineering education. So I did my master's in the late 80s, early 90s. That was also when I started my journey in engineering education. Because I knew I was going to be a faculty member, a lecturer. So I started, in the US, I started reading the Chemical Engineering Education Journal, which was in the departmental library. So I was already seeing people talking about how to teach better. I was already looking at how people were discussing if there's a problem trying to get students to understand like A, B, C, D, E. Yeah? And at that time, there's a user list on email that you can sign up to. There's an email list from Stanford University called Tomorrow's Professor. So I subscribe to those. And they will give you like one-page articles every week on some education principles or on anything related to higher education. So that was really interesting because every week I will look forward to these emails. Yeah, I don't know, I think they still exist, but then I cannot use that email anymore, so I don't know whether it's still there. Yeah, it's still around, Tomorrow's Professor. I don't know if you're interested, you can subscribe to it. But now, this is like what Prof. Rosna was saying. Who are we? When we choose to become a faculty member, a lecturer, it has to do with ourselves. Why are we here? Are we here because we don't have any other jobs? Yeah? We cannot find any other jobs. But are we here because we really like to be with students? Because I think if somebody doesn't like to be with students, then that person shouldn't be here. If you really like research, then, there's a lot of other research institutions where a person can really flourish. It's not bad if you like research. It's just that you're going to have a nightmare with students, right? Why give yourself the stress of facing students? Why go through the hardship and something that you don't like when you can do so much better elsewhere? Yeah, that is my opinion. But if we are in a university, whether we like it or not, we have to like students, no matter what kind of students they are, because they are, by the fact that they are in front of us, that shows that God has given them to us as one of our responsibilities. Yeah? And I come from a family of educators. My mother was a teacher, was a school principal. My father, he was a school principal, and then he went to the state education department. And they were this early generation teachers. My father went to Kirby in the UK, so he was among the first batch of teachers being trained. Yeah? So he was very passionate. I used to have students staying in my house all the time because they couldn't find anywhere to stay. So, though they were very good examples to me on how to best help students. So, my journey in engineering education started at the same time as my journey in research. So that was really interesting. Yeah? And I really identified, I was wondering why did I was doing research, but at the same time, I was reading about teaching and learning. So when I reflected on it, I began to understand myself that I really, really love teaching. I really like to help students. I really like to see them having those aha moments, if I can help them get there. So even though I was also passionate about my research. I find it very interesting. I'm doing process control, process dynamics, all those programming things where the machines were very slow at that time and I had to suffer and wait the whole day before the calculations converge. That was okay, yeah, because in between then I can read chemical engineering education, I can read about teaching. Yeah? So that turned out very well because when I came back, it was a whole different world. Now, working in UTM, when I started working, the intake was just like 20 to 30 students. So it was very easy to teach. And they were really motivated students because at that time, it was very difficult to get into the university. They were really, really responsible. You can use whatever technique, they will try their best to learn. Yeah? Unfortunately, when I came back after my PhD, it was not the same anymore. Yeah? Now, so that was why I started changing the way I teach, because I was already reading about it. So I said, why not try? So I tried a lot of things, and process control. Who's in chemical engineering here? Chemical engineers? Do you teach process control? Do you want to teach process control? You know, I can assure you, if you teach process control, you will have a job for life. Because everybody hates process control. What would you say if you have a subject that is not, you know, that's not only the students are afraid of it, even the lecturers hate it. Yeah? But that was a blessing in disguise for me because nobody ever wanted to take away my subject. So I had the chance to really work through it and figure out, how can I best teach this to my students? How can I best help them to learn this? Yeah, because nobody ever wanted to take process control from me. Yeah, with all the other courses, everybody was scrambling. They were, oh no, I want to take this. So they started rotating. So that was quite bad because then you don't have the chance to really refine how you teach. Yeah, so that was a blessing in disguise. So this is our first year course. I did the experiments in teaching in my problem-based learning course, in my process control course. So it started with active learning, cooperative learning, then I learned about problem-based learning. And I think it fits in very well with process control because then I managed to relay to my students how important control is. What is the physical meaning? What is the importance behind all those mathematics that they see? Behind all those simulations that they had to see. And it's really, really interesting because even though it was a lot of work, now, remember I told you about being who you are. And even though it was a lot of work and people were saying that I was crazy to do it, just how much work that I had to go through at that time, and when I was doing this alone, I had to approach on average 10 companies before I will find one who will agree to let the students go in several batches so that they can get the information to do the control system design. Yeah? So that was a lot of work. But then I think it has to do with who you are. And as a Muslim, you know that you have to do your best before it will be accepted. Before that, when I was teaching control, I remember seeing some of my ex-students when I was who I was giving lectures to, and they say, you know what, Dr. Khairia, I remember you as a very good teacher, but I don't know what you were teaching me. I forgot what you taught me. So and I was thinking like, okay, I'm thinking I'm getting reward, but then how can I get the reward from God if the students never even remember what I was teaching? So that was part of the reason why I started working really hard, and it was okay. Yeah, I could accept the kind of work that I had to do this. But then more and more of the lecturers started coming on board. So the workload became bearable. Yeah. And this was our first year course, also using problem-based learning. But Okay, now let's talk about how can research and teaching come together. It's been really interesting because when I was preparing this slide, I just found out, hey, you know what? That's true. One of my research started from my teaching. Now, after my masters, I had to develop the process control lab. And before that, I was working a lot with simulations. But because I was in charge of the process control lab, I could buy the equipment that I wanted to try out hands-on. Yeah. So whatever that's used for teaching can also be used for research, and I wrote papers based on that. Yeah. Then in one of the case studies for my control class, we managed to get a palm oil refinery. Now, my experience before that was just in oil and gas process, for oil and gas processes. Then when we went into the palm oil refinery, I begin to see that there's a lot of gaps in terms of automation. And I saw needs for research in palm oil refining. I'm still doing research in palm oil refining now as a result of that. And I managed to get to know the plant manager very well, who was very helpful. And two PhD and one master student got his permission to get data from there. So that turned into my research, although it started out as a PBL case study. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, what I'm doing for teaching helped my research. What I'm doing for my research also translated into my teaching. Because when one of my students, she finished her PhD at the palm oil refinery on a project on developing a troubleshooting system using fuzzy logic. Yeah. So what she did, based on the data that she got, we wrote a case study for training that can be used for classes and also for palm oil refinery operators and technicians. Okay, so that went into the teaching area. So, in my opinion, if you really understand what you're doing, if you understand both sides really well, it's really complementary. There's no tension between it. I don't know where the tension comes from. Because although I'm doing research that is quite highly technical, you can easily bring it down and make it complement what you're doing in your classes. Now, as for engineering education and engineering education research, because of my mentors, I decided to take a scholarly path. If I didn't have the mentor, I think I would not have taken the scholarly path because I wouldn't have seen it. Now, this is one thing that you have to think of when you look at your teaching. It doesn't matter whether it's engineering education, business education, or whatever education. Just as we are scholarly in our research, we can also be scholarly in our teaching. Okay? And this is the difference. It's acceptable for a school teacher not to expand further. But I think as somebody who God has endowed with intelligence, I'm not saying that others are not intelligent. What I'm saying is, in general, academics are very intelligent people. If you put your heart and mind to it, you can actually expand the field. Because from our training in our master's and PhD program, we have been trained to expand the field, to push the boundary of the field further, to provide better understanding. Yeah? So don't just think of the scholarly activities that we have to do is just within our training in that technical area, because that can also happen in our teaching. You know, you have questions when you want to do research in your area. Those questions, those similar type of questions should also pop up in our brain when we're teaching. Yeah? Now, these are among my mentors. Can you recognize them? This is an old photo, almost breaking up. Now, that is Richard Felder and Rebecca Brent. Carl Smith. Richard Felder and Rebecca Brent they were the first that I invited. I really wanted to learn from them because I was reading their writings a lot. So in 2007, I invited them, but they were so expensive. Of course, I didn't have the money. 2007, got back from my PhD, just in a task force, getting excited. UTM also got excited about engineering education. So then I said, okay, I volunteer to be the secretary of a conference. And since they don't have any idea, they've never read a lot of things, they don't know who to invite, I said, let's invite Richard Felder and Rebecca Brand. I had to try and find 50,000 ringgit just for the airfare. That was in 2007. Because they have to come by business class, yeah, from the US. So 2 tickets, 2 business class tickets. Okay. Anyway, Carl Smith is he doesn't insist on a business class ticket, so it's cheaper to bring him. But I learned, even Richard Felder, when he came, the thing that I remembered most, aside from all the teaching tips, and of course, whatever it is that I've done and that I verified with him, I asked him whatever I didn't understand, he told me that make sure you write. In addition to all the reading, in addition to implementing, he said, make sure you write. So that was something that I really remember. Even from 2007, sorry, he came 2005, Carl Smith was 2007. Even at that time, he told me to write. And I wrote a paper in 2005. Yeah? Now, Carl Smith, he's very subtle in his mentoring. He gave me articles to read. Yeah? He doesn't talk about all the theories in education, but he gave articles. Yeah? Richard Felder is a very good storyteller. He will illustrate things through storytelling. So that was really easy reading. Carl Smith wanted me to go one step further because we were starting our PhD in engineering education program. So he was giving me more hardcore educational theory things. So he gave a workshop on engineering education research and how to start off and all those things. Yeah. This is a conference we had in 2010. This is Professor David Radcliffe. He was the chair of the School of Engineering Education in Purdue. He was the second one. Kamya Hagigi, I met him in Purdue. Yeah, but he died. And after that, David Radcliffe took over. I don't know if you've met him, but this is Professor Duncan, the late Professor Duncan Fraser. So the IFES award that I recently got is named after him. He made a lot of changes in teaching and in helping students learn chemical engineering in Africa, yeah, in Cape Town. He was from the University of Cape Town. This is Heidi de Vries and Johannes Strobel. Both of them were in Purdue at that time, but now they are off somewhere else in other universities in the US. So I learned a lot from each of them. But one thing that strikes me most was that everybody was going through the direction of the scholarly path. Yeah? Now, what is meant by the scholarly path? Number one, read. I found that a lot of people, when at engineering education team conferences, when I review things, the papers have just like 2 or 3 references. Yeah? Now, if you have a technical paper, if you write a technical paper in your own field, how many references do you normally have? Even for a conference paper? At least 20, 30, right? Now, this is what we need to change. We need to understand. If you want to go into engineering education, to be scholarly, we need to read. We need to know what other people are doing. And there's a lot of accessibility. Don't just read in engineering education, because the same technique, OBE in engineering and OBE in other fields are the same. Constructive alignment in social science and constructive alignment in engineering or sciences, it's the same. Yeah? Except that they're talking about different content. That's all. Yeah? Now, learn the philosophy, learn the principles, and the research methods. Yeah? The research is not that different, except that there are certain paradigms that you have to be aware of. And sometimes it challenges how we view the world. And it's really fun, actually. Because when you learn this, you begin to broaden your view. And also, one thing about reading, it allows us to catch the language. What are the terms when certain people say certain things? You know, in our own field, in engineering, let's say in control, when you say disturbance, when you say control variable, when you say set point, there's certain meaning attached to it. This is the same with education terms. But even more complicating is that in education terms, sometimes terms from the UK and terms from the US are very different. Yeah? Yeah, like just simple thing, assessment and evaluation. Now that's really funny. Learn and be careful so that you don't get confused. Yeah? Now, learn about the research. It's really multidisciplinary, but by doing the research, you don't guess anymore whether it works or not. Initially, I was just trying to find the impact. Yeah? I was just trying to find, does it work? You know, PBL is a lot of work, but does it work? All this effort that I have to put in, does it really work? I felt like stopping the PBL that we were doing in our first year. Because, you know, people keep saying, oh, the students are not matured. Are you sure? You know, the students don't really know, blah, 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 blah. So then I had a PhD student in there and studied what happened to them. She did even something that is longitudinal on students who have gone through and what happened to them. So we found out that they were actually able to get the skills that they learned in the course and use it in other courses. And the environmental sustainability awareness that we instilled in them was still there even when they were in the third year. So obviously it was worth it. So we didn't stop. Yeah? And now we are getting into instead of just the what, the why and the how questions. That means we are not just looking at the quantitative studies, we are also doing qualitative studies to get richer data. And please collaborate. You need to collaborate with other people if you want to do this. I am very well aware that my area is not in education, per se, from the beginning. So I don't know a lot of the theories. I don't know a lot of the research methods. And if I want to do high quality research, I need somebody from education to come and work with me. Both of us in our area, you know, if somebody is in educational psychology, they like empathy, then I would work with somebody from psychology, educational psychology. I'm working now on epistemology. This is the nature of knowledge in engineering. So I have somebody in education from the basic education. They call it Asas Pendidikan, Jabatan Asas Pendidikan, because they are the ones who know a lot about the philosophy. Yeah? So be willing to admit that there are things that you don't know. Otherwise, you will be stuck. Yeah? Now, whenever I read somebody that I don't understand, I have people who I will call. Hey, what does this mean? Yeah? I don't know what this means. So being able to say, I don't know, I want to learn. Let's do this together. Now, you also have to write. Don't wait until it's perfect to write. Because if you want to wait until it's perfect, you will never write. We have a study, I was talking to Dr. Tazli. I have one PhD student who's studying about the cognitive domain. Yeah, very interesting. This is being motivated and actually doing it. Some people can be so motivated, but then they don't do anything about it. So I was wondering, how come I have these students who seem to be really, really motivated in my class, but they never actually do anything? So that's why I started this study on conation. Yeah? There's something called the cognitive domain. C-O-N-A-T-I-V-E. Conation. So it's not a misspelling. It was so funny because even somebody from education said that my student made a spelling error. It's not a spelling error. It's cognitive. So the study, we found out from the study, because we want to do a comparative study between students in the West and students in Asia, and we found out that those in the West tend to be slightly lower in planning, but higher in the action domain, yeah, action punya ni criteria. Those in Asia, planning very high, action low. So they plan and think about it, but never actually getting to do it. So that's really funny, yeah? You know, when you want to understand your students, it's beyond the learning, understanding them. So anyway, I've also discovered that when I want to do research, I take a very engineering approach. Because engineers like to solve problems, right? We see the problem and then we start to try and find a way to solve it. But then, you know, with machines, with our equipment, it's easy. With the processors, it's easy. With human beings, but then it's really interesting. So you need to write, because writing will force us to reflect. We will get feedback from our reviewers, and we get to share. Yeah? And really, when you share, you will get so many feedback from other people who want to read who has read your paper. And that is really, really rewarding. But one thing I found out is that even though many people will read your paper, not many of them will go on to write. So your citation may not be that high, even though other people will read and use and actually implement what you've done. Now, I said just now you need to work with others. Working with others, you can get support. Join community of practices, because then you can also develop ideas and collaborate. You can see what others are doing. And we can work on larger problems that will have greater impact. Once we have developed this knowledge, because now, this is especially in engineering education, engineering educators tend not to read engineering education literature. Not many will read. So that's why at our center, we decide to translate it into training. So we train other people so that we can disseminate. Partly is to disseminate what we're doing into real implementation. Okay? And you can have others do the training, not only you. And because you go out for training, you do training, you get feedback from other professionals, it will increase our own professionalism and excellence. Okay? Don't be scared. You will get comments, and some of them are quite harsh. But it's okay. Take it as something positive as part of the learning process. Yeah? By the way, if you really like to doing this, you'll be happy. Yeah? After all, we need to be happy in our profession. I really pity the person who wake up every morning and they're not happy. Even though I have to come all the way this morning, go to the airport early in the morning, take Air Asia, I'm still happy because I know I'm going to meet a very supportive community in UTP. And I know I can be of help. Okay? So it's nice to wake up every morning knowing that you're doing something that you like. So this is our PBL COP, Community of Practice. Professor Tanun Seng, it so happened when we were in Tsinghua giving training, he was also there. He was among my earliest mentor in problem-based learning. This is when we had International Research Symposium on Problem-Based Learning with Aalborg University. We had it in Malaysia. I was in Denmark for the inauguration of the UNESCO Center on PBL and sustainability. This was when IRS PBL was in Bogota. I was with Professor Annette Kolmos in India giving a workshop. So we have a very large community of practice in problem-based learning if you're interested to be part of it. engineering education community of practice. There's more than that. This is Robin Clark, Professor Robin Clark. He's one of the movers in engineering education in the UK. This was in Denmark. This is Eric de Graaf. He was the chief editor of the European Journal of Engineering Education. Now he has passed it on to Yonte. You may have met, if you come to WIF 2017, Professor Cindy Edmond and Jennifer Turns. They're very big on reflection. Huh? Ni Cindy. Duduk. I really duduk. But Cindy is very tall, so she sat normally. If you look at the full photo, Jennifer was actually sitting on her leg so that she will be the same height as Cindy when Cindy is sitting. Now, they actually shared a lot on reflection material, on how to do it in the classroom with us. And Cindy got really sick a while back, a few years back. And one thing that she told me was, take care of your health. Take care of your health first before anything else. So now I go for my morning walk at least for half an hour before I go to the office. Today I missed my morning walk, but I ran up the steps on it to Asia. So still about 13 minutes exercise again. This is the IFES community, the National Federation on Engineering Education Societies. The Washington Accord boss head came because they want to collaborate with IFES. This is the Royal Academy of Engineering Community of Practice. This is on the teaching track promotion, teaching path promotion punya ni, group. That is, of course, SEAM, Society of Engineering Education Malaysia. So sometimes community of practice, you can join something that already exists. Sometimes you may need to get one started. Yeah? So come and join us in SEAM. Now, we've had a lot of workshops, and it's been very challenging, but it's really nice when we are able to disseminate the research findings through workshops. And I'm really hoping that when you do research, and you do research properly, you begin to talk about it to other people. Even if you can create like half a day workshop, that would be good. Don't let things only stay in a published paper. Unfortunately, especially among Asians, we don't read. But whenever I go anywhere, the first thing that I will ask you to do is read. Because that was the thing that really triggered my interest. Yeah? Okay. Just to show you, of course, I'm not doing just PBL, but this is just an example. Even though not many people will read about it, but then they do cite and show that, yay, they've done it. They use cooperative problem-based learning. Yes. Yeah? There was an article that says, technical papers published are not read, mostly not read. I said, I don't think so. Because when you write in engineering education, I get a lot of response. Yeah? And I think the culture is increasing on reading. People are more aware now. So in general, although we still want more people to read, but now it's getting more and more. Okay? Okay, I'll let you into one secret. I'm not crazy about awards, especially when I have to fill in so many forms and give so many evidences. But being a center of excellence, there's a certain KPI that I have to get my center to fulfill. And there's marks for awards. Every year, somebody in the center has to win awards. And it's not just one. We have to get awards at the national level and at the international level. And we were like half dead, man. In 2017, I didn't apply, but suddenly I got that award. I say, okay, alhamdulillah. Yeah, because I entered ITEX and I got just a silver, I think. Silver don't count, they only want gold. You see the stress of being in a center of excellence, but then, we didn't get, being in a COE, we didn't let that get to us, because we understand that the instrument that we're using is for research and innovation. It's not for teaching and learning. I was pleading with Prof. Rosna, please let that instrument come out so that we can do better in the marks. Okay. Do you recognize this, the scholarship reconsidered paper? Have you ever read it? Has anybody read this? The Boyer's Scholarship of Teaching and Learning? Now, Boyer said he wanted to get the conversation started on redefining scholarship. This was back in 1990. Redefining scholarship so that it has a wider meaning rather than the restrictive meaning of just doing research and discovery of new knowledge. So he suggested that we expand it to 4. Discovery, this is the traditional definition of scholarly work before this, but to also include integration, when you integrate different disciplines and help people to see how things fit and how it can be applied and used, and even create new things from the integration. Application, and this is not just taking theory and applying it, but taking this at a newer level in terms of real-world problems that can be complicated, and sometimes you have to modify and adapt the theories to make it applicable. And on teaching. So teaching is a synthesis of that area, that content area, and also on how to help students learn, how to best help students learn. Okay? I'm not going to read all this, but never mind. Can there be a balance? Do you think there's anybody that can have all 4? Boleh tak? Huh? Very doubtful. It depends on what you're doing. It depends on what you're doing. But then we can have 4 aspects, although not balanced at the same time. But in the end, at the end of our career, we can have different parts to it. Now, if this is unbalanced towards research, when I look at this, I remember what my son said. He studied at a very prestigious university in the US. It's the top research university, it's a top public university in terms of research in the US. And he says that there's one professor who's really excellent. He's known to be a professor in research. He's really excellent. He gets millions and millions of funding. But when he teaches a course, nobody ever wants to register for his course. If you register for his course, you'll pray that his graduate students will come because they can understand his graduate students better than him. So when I look at this, I thought, maybe this is him. But I'm not saying that if you are doing this is bad, because then you will have your own contribution. Except that if you tend to be excellent in this and you are here because you never learned anything, it's time to learn. Because you never know, if you don't learn how to teach well, how can you transfer what you discover here into something that is meaningful for your classes? Only the graduate students when you supervise them, and you can pay them from your funding. But it's such a waste to have such a good brain doing so many good things and not knowing how to relate to students. Don't you think so? Because the students are the future. If you cannot use that to educate the students, trying to figure out how for whatever we know in our area of expertise to help the students understand, I think that's very important. Okay? Now, what if you are very high on teaching, but then quite low in research? my suggestion is, if you really, really like teaching, go into the research area. Take it as a research. Now, I've met some people who say that, who has a PhD, and say that, I just cannot do research. I said, then how did you get your PhD? Take some effort, because this was what I was saying. If you have the ability to get a PhD, I'm sure you can do the research. Because, PhD, permanent head damage. Don't tell me your head is that damaged and you cannot do research. Yeah? Start small. Even start with action research. And then you will see how much fun it is. Okay? So if somebody really has a passion in teaching, go ahead and do the research in your teaching in your area. Because I have discovered that in doing engineering education research, there are certain areas that really need us as engineers to do it. Those from outside the area cannot do it. Of course, we will have to work with those from education so that they can help us with the technique, with the proper method. But those who are not in the area will not be able to do it. Yeah? Like what I said, the ways of knowing, the different ways of knowing a certain thing, the different ways of knowing engineering, the different ways of knowing electromagnetic theory. Yeah? So, there are multiple ways. This is from David Radcliffe's slide. Some people started off in teaching, and then they got interested and went on to practice the research in that area. Some started from research, and I've met some people who at a certain age, they say it's time they try to get what they know to the students. So they decided to venture out. Yeah? So there's different pathways available. And I don't expect everybody to have the same pathway. But I would like to persuade all of you not to see this as something that is in competition. Because if we can learn, now this is operational learning. I'm not saying that we can become an expert in educational research, because that takes time. But if we have the operational knowledge, and we are passionate about teaching our students, and we have our research in our area, you will see how to build the bridge across. Okay? Never mind, I will not talk about this. But Boyer's conclusion was that there need to be a more inclusive view of what it means to be a scholar, and the recognition that knowledge is acquired through research, through synthesis, through practice, and through teaching. Not just the traditional definition of scholar just through research. And we should celebrate the richness and the talents of our faculty members. No matter what the pathway is, I think support has to be there. Yeah? Now, this is not something that is already well established. All over the world, people are still trying to find the best way to reward all the work that is being done through teaching. Yeah? But it's still very difficult, because evidence is really, really difficult. But what we have to remember is, as an institution, I have a lot of times hear people saying that, oh, we celebrate good teaching. But in the end, during the appraisal and the promotion, it doesn't happen. Yeah? I don't know. Ada? Prof. Rosna, ada tak? People say, okay, we do it, tapi in the end never happen. But celebrate both. But then, iceberg, you will only see the top 1/3 outside. This is what we say, this is what we write all around. But how we actually behave, this is partially visible from the outside. But then, all those unwritten rules, the core values and the culture that's inside, it's invisible, but it's it's really felt. So if somehow there's a signal that in that institution there's competition between research and teaching, then of course there will be competition. Everybody will view it as a competition. But if as an institution it's seen as something that is complementary and celebrated and supported, then I think there will be no tension in it. Yeah? Of course, our time is limited, but then we can always, shift our focus at different times and develop the 21st century educators that should be educating our students. Yeah? So how do we define 21st century educators? I don't know. I hope in the 21st century we can somehow come to a place where we are happy to support both. Yeah? Now, I think that by being a lecturer, being an academic, I feel very fortunate because there's a lot of opportunities for us to do good. Yeah? And remember that when you feel good, you do good, you feel good. So maybe it is also apparent in other vocations. But I think as a lecturer, you have so many opportunities. God has given you a lot of opportunities to do good every day, every time you come to work. Right? You don't have to seek people to do good because there's a lot of students around you that you can do good with. So, develop this culture so that we have a supportive culture for our students, for learning and for development. Not only for our students, but also for our colleagues. Let's be supportive of one another. It's the age of collaboration, not competition anymore. Be happy for our colleagues' successes and help each other. Yeah? So let's make this change, and I will leave you with what Steve Jobs is saying. I hope you will all be willing to join me and do something crazy once in a while. Okay? So thank you very much.